Thank you, Christina. Thank you, all the Books Are Magic staff, and everyone for coming out today. I appreciate it so much. And of course, my lovely conversation partner, Chen Julie. Thank you so much. So I'm going to read a little and borrow the novel because I don't have a copy with me. But I wanted to, oh yeah, JB. Hi, JB. Right here. Come here. Oh, I wanted to read a section I've never read before, so please bear with me if I mess it up. But this is one of my favorite scenes as just writing situational humor. I love a good, any Mr. Bean fans in the house? Yes. Like, right? Like, I feel like situational humor, you don't see it as often anymore, but I don't know, I get a real kick out of it. So this involves breaking into an archive, and there's a bathroom. Okay. I'll start from, I think all you need to know is Ingrid, the protagonist, and her best friend Eunice are trying to get into some mischief at this archive. Ingrid resumed restless book rifling, sweating so much a trickle slid down her neck and into her collar. If she called off the operation, nothing guaranteed Margaret, the sort of very formidable archivist, would eat a non-liquid meal tomorrow or the day after. The dearth of visitors was rare, too. Who knew when they'd have this chance again? She'd have to rely on the regularity of Margaret's bowel movements more than ever before. At 12:37 p.m., the archivist rose from her chair and issued a grating noise from her throat. Darryl promptly stopped shelving and took her seat. Ingrid watched Margaret disappear towards the woman's bathroom. This was her chance. Ingrid texted Eunice. She's going to the bathroom. Follow her. Eunice. What? Make sure she doesn't leave. She sprang up from her chair and followed closely behind Margaret. The original target was the woman's bathroom, but now Ingrid ducked into the gender-neutral accessible bathroom. She removed the jumbo tampons already unwrapped and removed from their applicators that she'd stashed in her roomy sweater. She jammed handfuls of them up the toilet drain, which ached for a good scrubbing and dousing of bleach. She held her breath, but the caustic smell of ammonia still assaulted her nostrils. When the tampons were tightly packed in, she got up and flushed. Water filled to the brim of the toilet. She flushed a second time. Water spilled over. A few more flushes and the entire bathroom floor had started to flood. Ingrid sprinted out, wicking water from her hands, and past Eunice standing stock still outside the woman's bathroom. What do I do if she's finished and you're not done? She whispered. Improvise. Eunice went in, looking pale and stricken. Ingrid estimated they had 5 minutes left. Darryl, she cried when she saw him at Margaret's desk. That's the, goth emo intern. Darryl, there's been an accident in the gender-neutral bathroom. He looked up from his phone with his usual bored, miserable expression. And the toilet's overflowing. He languidly reached for the landline telephone. I'll call maintenance. You can't, Ingrid shrieked. Huh? I already called them, and they're on their way. Okay, so there's water everywhere. It's already leaking onto the carpet. The archive papers could get damaged. Ingrid's mind raced. From the humidity. If Margaret knew you jeopardized Chou and Chou. Springing up from his chair, Darryl practically skipped to the supply closet. Ingrid had never seen him display such dedication during the entirety of his internship. She glanced at the clock. 4 minutes left at the most. She yanked down open drawers in Margaret's desk. The top drawer on the left, office supplies. The one beneath, files listing the contents of each archive box. The top drawer on the right held packets of dried plums and boxes of floss. The one below was crammed tight with various manila folders. Tax returns, visitor information, and there at the back, donor receipts. Ingrid flipped through the pages while peeking at the amounts at the top. $50, $25, $200, $70, $10,000. She heard a distant flush from the bathroom and a loud "fuck" from Darryl as she checked the name of the donor. John Smith. Fuck, she echoed back. She made to stuff the receipt into her pocket, then snapped a picture on her phone instead. She jammed the manila folder back into place. Voices were approaching. Her heart was thumping so loudly she was convinced it would belly flop out of her chest. No time to walk around the hinge counter that functioned as a barrier to the storage room. She crawled out from under the desk on her hands and knees, reaching her own desk just as Margaret strode back in, Eunice trailing nervously behind her. Margaret froze when she saw Ingrid. "What are you doing on the floor?" "Huh? Oh, I lost my pen. Pens are not allowed inside the archive," Margaret boomed. Ingrid swore flames flared in her eyes. "Pencil! I meant pencil!" She laughed as she awkwardly lifted herself into a chair. Margaret turned back to Eunice. "As I was saying, I've never taken commissions for the brocade, but I'll have to see what I can..." She stopped in mid-sentence when she noticed Darryl was missing. "Where's Darryl?" she asked his empty seat. At that moment, he reemerged. Platform creepers, fishnet socks, and ripped safety pin pants soaked through. "What on earth is going on?" "The bathroom flooded," Ingrid and Darryl said in unison. I'll leave it there. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for giving us a taste of the humor in Disorientation. Nothing gets me like good bathroom humor. A lot of diarrhea mentions. Great. So I wanted to start off with asking you how you came up with the idea for this novel, and specifically how you chose to incorporate satire and humor into it, because I think it may have been inspired by a real story, which may not have been so funny. So
yes, yes, it was very unexpected. So when I was first plotting out the novel in 2015, before I started writing, I thought it would be a very dark, serious novel set on a campus about sexual assault. And Ingrid, in that version, was a professor in her 50s. She's married a white man, and two of her students are the ones who get involved in this sexual assault case. And she has to then sort of confront her relationship to white men and desire and sex and all that good stuff. And so that was the version I was going to loosely write. Then, at the end of 2015, who remembers Michael Derek Hudson, also known as Yi-Fen Chou? So he's a poet, a white male poet, who wrote a poem with some Chinese mythology in it, and he submitted it to a few places. It got rejected, which, if you're a writer, you know, like, this is very normal, and that you just keep going, right? That's what writers do. But he was like, the problem is I'm white, not my poem. So what did he do? He was like, I just need to change my name. So he chose the name Yi-Fen Chou, which he stole from a Chinese American woman he grew up with. So this is the name of a real person, which just makes it worse, I think. And
a woman, you said?
Yeah. He was like extra bonus points, diversity. Yeah. So he submitted it to a diversity issue of an anthology for poets of color. So it was specifically barred from guys like him. And it got accepted, and he gleefully outed himself. I don't know what he was thinking, but I think in his head it was like, oh, you see, the white man is we're oppressed. And instead of people sort of being like, yeah, that's right, Michael, everyone was like, you're a terrible human. And that's how we all came to, not like it. He disappeared. I remember a few years ago, someone wrote an article like, what happened to Michael Derek Hudson? He really went into hiding. And anyways, I was so struck by this incident. And you know those incidents where it's like, real life is so absurd and you're like, I couldn't even make this up. I was like, I have to write about it. And I was like, Ingrid's a professor, so I'll have him research this poet, and then she's going to find out he's not actually Chinese American. And then as I kept planning, I think it still in my head wasn't necessarily satirical, but then when I started writing, and it's a different version from the version that was published, but that version, there was this really snarky, omniscient narrator, and I was like, whoa, who is this? This person's really mad. Oh, it's me. I'm mad. I have rage. I have unprocessed rage. And
we all do.
Right? So I was just like, oh, is this satire? I don't even know, because a lot of what I was writing, including like so many incidents in the book, the dialogue even, like, was just from real life. And I think the humor and that sort of like snarky, sometimes snarky voice was really a way for me to write about subjects that would otherwise be so difficult to write about. But this way I got to have fun at the same time and not feel like re-traumatized or anything. And like making yourself laugh, I think, is a great goal to just make it through like a writing day, right? Like, can I make myself, chuckle, and even if you don't write a lot of words, like, I got a chuckle out of it. So that's really how like it transformed into like something humorous, and it was so unplanned.
It's remarkable. Well, I think I can speak for all of us when I say you made us chuckle about a lot of aspects of academia, a lot of dynamics and features there. Are which of these features and dynamics are specific to academia, and which are kind of largely generalizable? And I'd just love to hear more of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, some of them I think they transfer, yeah, to different areas of like, so like one big example of something I was poking fun at that I had noticed in academia is in not just East Asian studies departments, but I think any what they call like specialized studies, which is like it could be like Africana, Black studies, Chicano studies, anyways, that a lot of the experts and the really like the chair of the department and all these people are just white scholars, and I always found that really fascinating. And now we've learned a lot of them have actually they've been like racial cosplaying, so this is like a big trend in academia. But I think this desire to sort of lord your culture over you, and this happened with this guy I went to college with who was studying Mandarin and like Chinese history and would love telling me that my pronunciation was wrong. And I was just like, is this your hobby? Is this what you get off? Like, get a more interesting hobby. And he later moved to Taiwan, and I swear to God, like, doesn't speak English anymore. Like, won't speak English. And he's from like a super white, like, Christian family from like the middle, like conservative California. Sometimes people forget there's like these small pockets of sort of rural conservative California. Like, and then the thing is that's annoying too is in Taiwan they'll like put these people on talk shows and be like, look at him, a white man just speaking perfect, and then like he feels like very pleased with himself, and I'm like, oh, this cycle must break. Anyways, I think that type of lording over, so I think we get outside of academia too, and just people who've sort of made our culture their hobby. That's all around us, and I think it can be very disconcerting to like, I don't know, go to a restaurant, like a Chinese restaurant or something, and then like hear someone explaining like the menu to their date, and you're just like, oh, make this dystopian nightmare stop. But yeah, so I think that's something that you can see this like weird possession that they want to take over and almost like know more than you because they can never be you. And so I think this is claiming expertise is like a way to try to get around that anxiety.
Yeah, and that actually, that dynamic causes a lot of issues for Ingrid with her identity, especially vis-a-vis the white men that she's around. Mm-hmm. And I'm fascinated with Ingrid. Mm-hmm. We'd love to hear you talk more about her hero's journey and her arc throughout the novel.
Ingrid, yes, so many people are so frustrated with her. What I hear a lot about Ingrid is before I was like, I wanted to shake her by the shoulder. And I'm like, I know. I put in a lot of moments where I think I wanted her to be, just a flawed, real human character. And I wanted her, I think, to see on the page something that I hadn't really seen before was just like, the political life of being Asian American. And I think in a lot of Asian American novels we would see like a sort of unified like it would be like a family or a group of people who would be sometimes unified in their politics, or politics wouldn't even come up, when to me like being Asian American is like we're so divided. We are literally, some of us out here just like Trump, across the chest and really, and like love guns, and then others, have been, radical activists for many, many years, and that's a tradition that's part of our past that a lot of us don't even know about. So it's like we're so across the board, and then I think, like Ingrid and I felt like I could relate to this, like just identifying as like loosely liberal, loosely Democrat, and just not questioning a lot of things and believing, well, you know, because I vote, I think I'm voting on the right side of history. I don't need to do anything else. I need to question the things I've been complicit in, or how I can still oppress other people and groups of people. And so I was like, yeah, I've never seen that, and I wanted to interrogate it. Oftentimes I think we write because we're just working things out for ourselves, right? So it was like interesting for me to have this character who believes she's on the right side of history, but then we see that she's really internalized the model minority myth, and I think a lot of ideas around whiteness, beyond just like, oh, Western beauty ideals, but whiteness as goodness in America. And I think that's something we don't always see is it's, and you would see in like old propaganda photos, right, where like the like Chinese Exclusion Act, and the Chinese people are depicted as literal villains or snakes I've seen, or it just dehumanized, right? And then it's like Uncle Sam, or the sort of was like is righteousness and goodness. And I think it's a narrative that's so prevalent, and I wanted Ingrid to really have to be confronted with that, right? Like, how is she sort of upheld all these ideas that at the end of the day aren't going to help her. They're not going to help her community. So yeah, I sort of just put her through the ringer. And she has to go through a lot of things, and she has a lot of like snacking breakdowns. I don't know, she's just like snacking and breaking down. Best type of breakdown.
Yeah, one aspect in which you put her through the ringer is fetishization, and you really confront this in a very forthright way that I have not seen represented in books. You almost chart this triangulation between sexual attraction and oppression and what was the third part of the triangle, and repulsion, right, most of all. So can you talk a little bit about Ingrid's relationship to Stephen, her relationship to other white men, and how that figures in your novel?
Yes, this is another topic, and I love that we can talk about it now, right? Because sometimes I feel like, wait, can we talk about it? It's like, yes, we need to talk about it. With Ingrid, so being fetishized, I realized, was such a particular experience of being like an Asian person. And I used to really say an Asian, like femme-presenting person, but you can be fetishized across any gender, any orientation. It's in every subculture, right? So I think it's yeah, such a particular experience of being hated and desired at the same time. And I was like, I don't know how to work through this. And it was just a lot of private conversations I would have with my friends. But I did feel this desire to see it on the page too, because it was like how I feel like the men who, and not just men, people who fetishize Asian people and people of all races, they can like get away with it more if we don't call them out. And I was like, I need to bring them to justice on the page and expose them for what they are. And you know, it's sometimes I think we can think of it as like, oh yeah, there's not much at stake here, but I think if you, like in 17, 18, I went deep into this forum that was like hardcore white nationalists. So these are proud like neo-Nazis just talking about Asian women and the things they think about us and how they describe us and how they go to Asia to fuck us and then dump us. And just like the language they use, that they're literally calling us slurs as they're describing like, you know, using and then I fell into this other thread. I realize this is getting dark, but it was all murders of Asian women by white men, and they were brutally murdered, like chopped up, I mean, burned in acid, and so a lot of them were their wives and girlfriends, and just, it was so dark. So anyways, I bring this up to say, when we talk about fetishization, it's not just like, ooh, Tinder dates, like swipe right. I'm talking about a literal global dehumanization of people that gets us raped and murdered. And so when I wrote about it, to me it was so high stakes, and it you know, I'm not even just yet trying to like be like, ooh, you guys suck. It was to be like, there's something that is run so deep in our country back to colonization and World War II and those like, you know, like comfort, quote unquote, conversations all around Asia that I think a lot of America like never addressed. And then that just carried through in our culture and like all the ways Asian women were represented. And it was like, this has affected me. It's affected pretty much every Asian friend I have. And it really messes with, I think, your identity, your sense of worth, right? And it was like, when am I going to be able to talk about this openly? When am I going to be able to hold this type of person accountable? Because they are in Asia. Let me tell you, if you've spent time there, I was teaching ESL there for a year, terrifying. These are all my colleagues. And they record themselves on, I saw like on YouTube, these white guys saying like with their Chinese wives, they're like, oh, like can't wait to dump our in-laws in like a retirement home, and my Chinese wife like wants them to live with us, like fuck that, like I'm like can't wait until they croak, like they like saying this about their in-laws, and I'm just like, these men should be arrested. So anyways, sorry, this is getting a really long answer. I guess I just feel so strongly. But that, yeah, wanted to bring them, like, I can never get justice in real life in a lot of ways, right? For all these women who were brutally murdered. So what maybe the least I could do is to represent that pain on the page.
One element of joy in the novel is
Pivot, yeah.
Ingrid's friendship with Eunice.
Aww.
I loved all the you read one example, but all the mishaps they kind of get into. She's really her ride or die. And there's also Ingrid's relationship with Vivian, which shifts fundamentally over the course of the book. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Oh, yay, I'm so glad you brought that up. And Eunice and Ingrid, I think their friendship came to mean so much to the novel and to readers of the novel. A reader once told me their dream of what happens after the book ends is that Ingrid and Eunice start a true crime podcast. And I'm like, this just fills my heart with so much joy. So I wrote 3 versions of the novel, and in the first version and the second version, Eunice didn't exist. Ingrid had no friends. She had no friends. But you know what? If you start looking at a lot of books, I realize like a lot of protagonists, they don't really have friends, especially if there's like a partner or a family involved or something. And I was like, oh, it's so easy to sort of forget that component of the human life. Is like, it doesn't matter how maybe introverted you are, you probably have a friend. So like, where is Ingrid's friend? And so that's how Eunice came to be, and I really wanted Ingrid to come up against an Asian American woman that is so unlike herself, and yet they're very similar because Ingrid has hang-ups around growing up in a really white community, and Eunice has none of them. She grew up in like, you guys know, like Diamond Bar, Walnut, Roland Heights in California. It's like it's, yeah, 99% Asian probably. So she's wearing, you know, colored contacts, and she bleaches her hair blonde, but she's not thinking about whiteness. And to that idea is like ridiculous to her, and she doesn't have these hang-ups that Ingrid has, and yet both of them are very similar because they don't question the way things are, and they just sort of give in to systems around them. So I thought it would be fun to make this very unlikely duo best friends, and to give, I guess have Ingrid explore her relationship to Asian women in a way that gets complicated when she finds out her fiance only dates Asian women, and she looks at Eunice and she's like, you're an Asian woman too, I forgot. We're so close, I forgot. And then she starts to be paranoid about Eunice's attractiveness. But I think, yeah, that's something that I wanted to explore too, that I've seen in my life and the lives of my friends, is Asian women hold each other up so much, but then sometimes depending on what community you grow up in, we're taught to be pitted against each other, or like there can only be one of us. I remember why am I telling this story? When I went to college, I showed up with a lip ring and was like, I'm gonna be different. I'm gonna be like a cool, like, and, you know, like bleached part of my hair with, this was 2005. I just need to put context. Okay, so That'd be embarrassing. This is like, people think this anyways. So this was 2005. I bleached my hair, I had like a lip ring, and thought I would be, and I was going to UC Irvine, which was 60% Asian, and just thought I'd be like the unique Asian girl. And then I see all these other emo, like scene Asian girls with their lip rings and like cool tattoos, and I was like, oh. And we would just like look at each other across the room like, oh. But then of course we like became friends. I think it's like this weird phenomenon of we're looking at each other, maybe sizing each other up, but then we want to also be each other, and we see each other so much, but seeing each other is like almost too real, and so then you like walk in the opposite direction. But I would love to know, because I love when we can have conversations and I can ask you things too, and I would love to know, how do you feel? Like, have you ever experienced that, or just thoughts about this?
So first of all, I didn't know I'd have a lip ring to be your friend. I would have dressed differently tonight. But it's funny because I always grew up around Asian women and a lot of people of color, and I remember walking around New York with my friend who happens to be black, and she would nod and smile to every black person she passed. And this was like in the 90s, it was early. And I was like, why do you get that? Why don't I get that? Like, if I'm not an Asian person, they think I'm weird and they pretend they don't see me. Like, for a while I tried. I started doing that. People were like,
make intense
what
eye
is
contact.
wrong with you? But I think that something shifted during the pandemic, despite all the horrors and atrocities. I think that there is an increased sense of solidarity. Like, now it's not weird for me to sit next to another Asian woman on the subway because we're safer together in a crowd. And if I smile to someone now, I'm not that weird 90s kid. It's actually somewhat welcome. So I think that maybe we as a whole, as a collective group, are coming through an awakening of sorts, and we're still kind of processing what it means to be Asian. Yeah. So I'm really heartened by the direction that it's taking. But thank you for your insights. That was really
I agree. I also love the idea of you walking around as a kid, like making deeply intense eye contact.
I was like, you're gonna mug me? This kid's gonna mug me. Okay, so we have time for one more question. I have to get this in. So you're not on Instagram, but your book is all over Instagram. A lot of people love Disorientation on Instagram. I love seeing this cover art everywhere. And there's stiff competition, but one bookstagrammer, Hsieh, who I'm in touch with, her handle's Winston and Books, her cat's name Winston, has really been bullying people into buying your book. She tags people and she's like, have you bought this book yet? She does this, like,
if you're watching, I love you. Thank you.
She has, I think, single-handedly sold like hundreds of your books. So she wanted to ask, because she couldn't be here in person, she's watching from Portland, which character was your favorite to write and which was the hardest?
Thank you, Hsieh. Wait, did I say that right, Hsieh? Oh, that's a great question. My favorite to write, I think it was Eunice, because Eunice brings a much needed lightness to the book, and she just is so genuinely herself. And I want to have a friend like Eunice. I think just spending time with her, I would always feel happy, and I would always, just come away like, oh, Eunice, I love you, and I want to hang out with you in real life. So I think Eunice brought me a lot of joy in creating her, and in a lot of ways, like dedicating her to the Asian woman in my life, and also Vivian, because sometimes I think people, like readers, have been like, do we like Vivian? And I'm like, we love Vivian. I've been a Vivian. I feel like I could write Vivian because I was like, a few years ago, when I was, I think, sometimes overcompensating for feeling like I was coming to organizing and activism late. I found myself like in these Asian Facebook groups, just like scolding other Asians and just like being like, you need to do self-crit. Or I would just sometimes be really, when I'd be like really upset about something, I would like call the moderators to ban someone. And then I realized later, I was like, what if this person then like became like an MR Asian or something? I'm like, so maybe that's not the answer. But anyways, I love Vivian too. And I think both of them, writing them and just writing how Asian, and this is such a remarkably simple and obvious thing to say, but how we're different, And I think getting to explore that we are so we obviously share similarities, but we disagree with each other, and we can fight and come back together. And yeah, so writing Eunice and Vivian, I think, was so meaningful. And then the hardest character, ooh. So if you've read the novel, you know, like, all three white men are just evil. Which one's more evil? The funny thing is, one of them does the most egregious thing, but everyone hates Stephen the most. And Ryan Lee Wang, shout out to Ryan, another incredible writer, was like, Stephen is the greatest villain I had like read recently or something like that. And I think it's because Stephen represents, he's just so annoying because, and who do I just talked about this with somebody. He thinks he's the good guy. He's he's like, I'm the main character, I'm liberal, and I would have voted for Obama a third time if I could have. And just pats himself on the back so much. And I think this is what makes him so frustrating as a character, is that he is oppressing Ingrid, and he's manipulating her and gaslighting her, and he literally targets Asian women, right? It's not if you live in a town that is not 90% Asian and all your exes are Asian, that's not normal. You really have to be very dedicated in seeking them out and swiping, left on every other race. So I think he was hard. Yeah, I'm icky to write. And I had to challenge myself to write him, to make him the most convincing version of himself is to make him then the most horrifying version of himself. Because it's the flatter I made him, the almost less evil he would be. But if I could make his evilness complicated, because at the very end, and this was last pass, third pass, when everyone's don't make any more changes, Elaine. But I was I think I put in a line that at the end he believes he loves Ingrid. And I was very hesitant to put that in because I just wanted to be he objectifies her and he dehumanizes her and he fetishizes her, right? And I think all those things are true, and he thinks he loves her. And I think that's what makes these relationships hard, right? Is in all these relationships, is the white person actively thinking I don't see you as fully human? Probably not. They're just think I love you. And so I was I think that makes his evilness more complicated, and it makes it gives Ingrid something she has to give up, right? Because if she believes when he says he loves her for who she is, then she has to walk away from love and decide that even if he loves her, it's not the love she deserves. And yeah, it's not good enough for her. Yeah, so I guess Stephen.
So we're going to pivot now to audience Q&A. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and then I will repeat the question for the Zoom. Yes?
Yes, I was wondering if the Japanese woman that Stephen is, I forgot her name.
Izumi.
Izumi, yes. Not the Izumi that, the one that he translates for.
Oh yeah, Izumi
Izumi,
Kasuya, yeah.
Is that loosely based on Marie Kondo?
Oh,
So
no.
No? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, the question for Zoom attendees is, was Izumi loosely based on Marie Kondo?
Oh, no. But I'm really curious. What?
It
Or
seems
what?
that he's following a Japanese woman who's making waves in the U.S. or something, and is that Izumi? Sorry, I wasn't sure about
She's, no worries at all. So Izumi is, I feel I should spoil it a tiny bit just to put her in context, because I did sort of worry. I was if people don't make it to the end of this book, they're going to think I've created a deeply stereotypical Japanese woman, because she sort of, the way Ingrid sees her is as a walking, breathing anime character, and the way she dresses is Lolita style. But she's a Japanese writer who wrote a autofiction novel about working at a pink salon, which is an oral sex brothel, and they're real in Japan. And she says she was orphaned and ran away from this farm and sweet purple potato farm. Anyways, we find out at the end it's all a ruse, and she was not orphaned. She didn't work at a pink Solange, she is actually from a very wealthy family that lived between Tokyo and New York. And we realized, oh, this entire identity was built to capitalize on Japanese fetishes, right? Like, and this obsession America has over Japan and a very specific image of Japan. And she's, I think for Izumi, it's like, well, listen, the system's here, I'm going to profit. And I think this is a sort of conversation we have in POC communities where it's like, do I just, you know, is it just to just survive an unjust system? And then the debate is like, but is that bringing us backwards, or, you know, anyways, but I think that that's her character. Yeah. So not based on Marie Kondo.
I'm
Yeah.
not implying Marie Kondo like professionally sucks dick. I'm saying like in my mind it was more like sometimes I found it frustrating that she's like this Japanese woman and she loves cleaning, like that's her thing. And then I was like, please let it be ruse. Please let it be that she's just like playing with like house.
I see what you mean.
I just wanted to explain.
Right. Yeah. That she's become synonymous with like almost, I think I see what you mean. Yeah. This like one image that is acceptable to Americans of Japan. And they're like, we like this image. Tidy, clean. And yeah, let's just propagate it. Yeah. I get you. I see you. Yes.
I was just curious because you mentioned that when you originally conceived of the book, when it was in the 50s. And so this is kind of a two-part question, but in that original conception, was the sort of like consciousness, political change part of it? And if it was, like, did that change when you changed her age and like her position in the like?
The question is about your original conception of Ingrid as a professor in her 50s. In that conception, was the change in her politics and consciousness a big part of the book? And if so, did that shift when you changed Ingrid's age?
Yeah, it was always a part of it. Yeah. So like when I was loosely outlining the very like dark, serious version, it was, I think in my head I knew it would be there, but anyways, like the very first draft that I did write, she is still in her 50s and she's actually married to a white congressman, a Democrat. And he comes to represent like just a sort of hokey a version of that party. I always think of this example. This is a real life example that I'm like, you can't make this up. This white, I think he was a congressman, was on stage at like a rally, and he, a Democrat, was saying he believes in diversity. So what he did was he brought a glass of milk on stage and drank from it and was like, this is good. And then he took out a bottle of Hershey's chocolate syrup, poured it into the milk, stirred it, and was like, but now it's better. Diversity. I like Google this. This is fucking real. Yeah. So hey, I saw that. I was just like, America is deeply absurd at its core, and our politics are absurd. And this is not a man. Like literally, this is a man being like, I'm a good guy. you know what I mean. So, anyways, that's sort of who I based like the husband on. His name is Kenneth, and Ingrid sort of watches him do this campaign. And do this really hokey version where he like brings like, at one point I think they're like orphan children of color to like the stage, and he like cries over them or something. You know what I mean? And she has to look at her husband and be like, what have I done? Why have I made these choices? So I think, yeah, as like, so that aspect was sort of always part of the novel. And then when I changed her age, it just stayed. It evolved maybe a little bit in sort of increments, but it was always like so many blinders on around white men and white just institutions. And so in all three versions they have the sort of the big discovery that she makes breaks all of that down. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Elaine. I have a spicy question for you. In the years since this book has been out, have you ever had the experience of like a Steven type of guy reading it and not getting it and being like, oh, I got it, but you're like, no, not at all?
So a spicy question from Delia. In the years since your book has been out, has a Steven type of guy read it, not gotten it, but thinks that they gotten it, and you've had to correct them?
I love this question, Delia. Unfortunately, no. I actually had this conversation with Chen Julie earlier about how in the events I've done, and there haven't been that many, but the one demographic I haven't met is white men. One did come to Delia's launch in Skylight. By the way, shout out to Central Places, beautiful, incredible book. Everyone get it. And it was a white man being like, oh yeah, you remember. And yeah, oh God, we should talk about this offline. But anyways, he was like, oh, I wanted to go to your event. Anyways, he was like the first one, and I was like, oh, interesting. And then I think it clicked that I haven't met many of them. I don't know if Steven types read the novel and are like, I hate this woman, and so, you know, would never like go to an event, or I don't know. What I love is I've met a few Asian women who have white partners, and they say they like highlight passages and are like, read this, we're gonna discuss this tonight, and I'm like, I have entered people's bedrooms, like that's insane. I'm just like, love imagining this white man like a pearl of sweat just like slowly falling down, like, God damn it. Like, is she gonna ask about like my last, 3 exes or whatever? But I would love for this to happen, because that would be such a disorientation, kind of like surreal moment of him just being like, hate guys like him. Here's my Asian wife, by the way.
Yeah, should all demand to see our partner's taxes folder. We have one more. Time for one more question. I think there was a hand over there. Yes.
I just wanted to hear you talk a little bit more about the protagonist's relationship with Vivian, because I love her character, and I think, especially in academic and intellectual spaces, I do feel like there's a lot of competitiveness around people who have like similar identities, or feel like there's like a scarcity of success they can achieve in academia or in intellectual spheres. So I was just wondering if you had more thoughts on that.
So the question was to hear more thoughts about Vivian, because there's a lot of competition in academic spaces and a feeling of scarcity.
Yeah. I'm so glad you love Vivian. Vivian, I think I wanted to show with her character the anxiety of when you sort of take on the mantle of, I've reached sort of the top Pokemon level of social awareness. What is that word? Like, you've just leveled up so high that like no one can call you out for anything. That, where do you go from there? It's a lonely space, because we're all, I think what I would notice within the activist community is like that anxiety of like, who could like out, quote unquote, woke. I like hate that word. It's just been so misappropriated by now, each other, right? And so then I would start to get anxiety, right? And so then that's how I would like be scolding people in these Facebook groups. And so I think I wanted to capture that with her character, and how that competitiveness she has that can be sort of grating sometimes I think comes out of, and this was something that clicked about her character when I realized like, oh, she used to be super conservative, and she grew up in a really conservative household that was really anti-gay, and she was closeted then, so of course it's so painful. I think you often do the thing that you fear, right? And so I think when she came out and sort of changed and then became an activist, she felt so much guilt and shame about her past that it was like, oh, all I can do now is overcompensate. And so she just has like a natural competitiveness to her, I think, because of that. But then, yes, for sure in academia, I think it's, and my experience in academia is sort of like loosey-goosey. It was not in the U.S. I'm a proud PhD dropout. If anyone is considering dropping out, I encourage you to. Life is so much better now. Your parents are probably like, oh, like, don't listen to that person. But yeah, from when I was there, I remember the exhaustion of being in these spaces, and I was doing modernism, like European modernism. I'm just gonna be revealing these embarrassing things about me. Had a lip ring and was like, thought modernism was cool and whatever. So I remember being at like an academic conference, and like the level of competitiveness that you have to dive into. This one guy's entire dissertation was based on James Joyce's level of myopia. It was like, I have a grant from like the Joyce Foundation in Switzerland to like study Joyce's eyeglass prescriptions and prove that he was not this type of nearsightedness. He was like this. And meanwhile, this was like when I was in Paris, like there were like protests outside, like the world was burning. And I was like, and this fool is focusing on like a dead man's eyeglass prescription. Surely there's more to life than this. And I was like, I must leave. Because I could feel myself getting into it. You feel yourself getting like, oh, well, but did you know this? Like, and then you're just like, I need to get out of this archive basement and see the sunlight. And yeah.
Love that. An inspiration for PhD dropouts everywhere. Elaine has thoughtfully put together a swag bag. And you all should have gotten a ticket.
Oh yeah, does anyone not have a raffle ticket? Oh great, I'll pass you one. Oh, please raise your hand if you do not have one. Oh yeah, they were on the seats, but if you don't have one, could we, Christina, could we pass these out? Thank you so much. So, it's a little tote bag. And it has snacks from the novel. I couldn't find koala cookies that Ingrid and Eunice eat at their makeup picnic in the park.
Does it have Tums in it?
Oh my god, I should have added Tums. That would have been
really
great.
A snack though.
And then I will shuffle. Ooh. Everyone has a raffle ticket? Okay, and then I guess we just add these in, and I shall shuffle away.
Powerball. $1 billion at stake.
This is fun. Okay. 3, 1, 8, 5, 6, 2. Amazing! Please clap. What's your name?
My name's Catherine.
Catherine, hi! Are you Catherine H? Oh my god, wait, that's so cool. It's so nice to meet you. An editor at The Atlantic, everyone.
Oh my god.
Please enjoy. You like it? Good. I just want to say, yeah, thank you, Chen-Julie. Everyone, please give her a round of applause. A beautiful country, incredible, life-changing book will break your heart a million times. Please, it's there right here, and you can get it signed. Thank you again to BAM and the whole lovely team. And thank you to all of you for coming out tonight. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you all again. Let's give one more round of applause for the excellent conversation. And as I mentioned earlier, Elaine's going to be signing at this doorway where my colleague Kevin is standing. So if you want to get lined up there, she will meet you over there shortly. And if you're joining us on the live stream, we'd encourage you to support this book by buying a copy at the link in the description. Have a good night.
I can remember the camera.
Oh yeah.
JB, it's great to see you. I'm gonna have a good.
I feel famous now.